Far beneath Elpis, steeped in starless shadow, nightmares stir in their fetters, and mysteries of the ancients abide in the realm of Pandæmonium. In the Warrior of Light's initial venture through time onto Elpis, they enlisted the help of Elidibus, whose memories of his past, broken as they were, regained some clarity in his defeat and release into the Aether.
Wait. I saw you there. In Elpis. No. I did not. But I did. I did. A lingering trace of impossibility. And a truth that fills my heart. My memories remain clouded, I fear.
In another time, another world, a youth clad in white stood awaiting the arrival of his guiding star, and the sights they would see together in Pandaemonium. In the time following the final days, the Warrior of Light found themselves face to face with a Lalafelian scholar named Nemgigi, seeming as if by fate or extreme patience to be in just the right spot to discover the hero. Aware of their adventures both within the ethereal sea and through time, Nemgigi implored the Warrior of Light to join her and her team in an endeavor befitting the Warrior of Light's expertise. They traveled down into Labyrinthos to meet Nemgigi's senior, Claudian, where the Sharlayan's work was explained. In the process of studying the ethereal sea, one day, from deep within, a crystal of pale blue appeared, not formed by any natural means, but crafted. But it was forgotten in the events surrounding the planned exodus from Aetheris to the stars, which, thanks to the Warrior of Light, was no longer a concern. Asking if they had ever seen anything like it, the Warrior of Light explained precisely what it was: a stone of the convocation. Or at least something akin. A crystal into which memories were poured to allow for recall and remembrance later, used by those of the convocation of 14 to raise their sundered brethren with recollections of their lives. Not wholly unlike the skill-proffering soul crystals that Eorzeans were familiar with. Or at least it was the same in appearance, but with no star sign matching a seat of office. Regardless, a device to house memory all the same, and so the crystal did. As the Warrior of Light held the stone, it began to glow and warned in faint traces of voice and memory for anyone who received its message to come to Pandaemonium, for the star was in danger. With such dire portents, and the Warrior of Light the only one capable of traveling into the past, Claudian asked that they return unto the world unsundered and solve the mystery of Pandaemonium and the crystal, offering it to the Warrior of Light. And so returning back to the ocular within the crystal tower, the Warrior of Light ventured back onto Elpis to discover what endangered past and present. Awakening on the ground, the Warrior of Light rose to discover they had crash-landed directly into a young man. The youth introduced himself as Themis, and noted that the Warrior of Light reminded him of a friend that had told him to await a falling star in Elpis, though he had not expected it to be so literal. The story of being Azem's familiar was offered up, much to Themis' surprise and delight, as the very friend who had told him of the falling star was in fact Azem. Assuming that the Warrior of Light had been sent to the same ends as Themis, to investigate Pandaemonium, the Warrior of Light revealed their quest, if not their temporal origins, and Themis pried no further into their background, other than to inspect the crystal that began this affair. Themis explained precisely what Pandaemonium was, a facility extending from beneath Elpis, overseen by an organization known as the Words of La Habrea. A prison and research station, it housed invaluable subjects whose powers could threaten the balance of the star. Recently, there was a shift in Aether, and all contact ceased, and so Themis was sent as a representative of an organization aligned with the convocation to investigate. Explaining that originally Azem had intended to join him, but for unknown reasons had deemed it unwise, leaving Themis with the words, "Fear not, for in my absence a star shall fall before you." With goals aligned, Themis and his falling star began their journey together, seeking entry into Pandaemonium. Via a word of La Habrea, the two were granted entry into Pandaemonium, but also warned to take care and heed the warders, those who worked as caretakers, researchers, and jailers of Pandaemonium's denizens, and to bring back news of what transpired, so that his master La Habrea might direct them on the proper course of action. Both Word and Themis noted the Warrior of Light's reaction upon hearing La Habrea's name. Had they met before? To which the Warrior of Light reluctantly noted that they had dealings in the past. Now that the way below was open, Themis and the Warrior of Light descended into the underworld beneath Hope. As the group arrived at the entrance to Pandaemonium's highest layer, Asphodelos, Immediately, Themis could feel something was wrong. Despite the many wards and protections crafted by La Habrea for the realm, someone or something had tampered with them, eroding them from inside out. Fortunately, it was in Themis' ability to reinforce the failing wards, slowing their degradation, though it left him unable to provide martial support to the Warrior of Light. He would, however, still have the power to create illusory allies to stand at their side. Even more ominous, though, was the lack of any other living soul. And then the gates of Asphodelos opened, and a lone figure ran towards them. A warder, terrified and incoherent, transformed into his truest self, ready for battle. To which the Warrior of Light responded with the familiar violence to bring him to his senses. Doing just that, the party waited for the warder to awaken. As he did, he introduced himself as Eorzean, the warder of Asphodelos. Unsure of what came over him, all he could remember was a mind filled with desperation and anger. Apologizing, he thanked them for their aid and explained that the creations of Asphodelos had been set free. Unsure of the fate of his fellow warders, Eorzean explained that in the chaos, a strange whispering had assailed him, and everything went black until this very moment. Begging the aid of Themis and the Warrior of Light to save his compatriots, Eorzean also asked of Themis what would happen if the Convocation became aware of what was taking place in Pandemonium. Speaking honestly, Themis explained that they'd likely treat it as a lost cause. It would be disconnected from the outside world, or wiped from existence entirely, a fate none of the party could stomach. Acknowledging that resolve alone would not save the day should Eorzean go alone, Themis and the Warrior of Light by his side prepared to enter Asphodelos proper, to solve its mysteries and help those they could yet save. Standing at the gates, the party only heard silence, meaning that neither warden nor creature had made good their escape. Eorzean offered up a plan to save both warder and creature. As though dangerous, he could not bear to see all the labors of his fellows go to waste if it could be avoided. A fact Themis noted would bring a smile to La Habrea's face. A comment which Eorzean quickly struck down, doubting La Habrea's face was even capable of such warmth. Eorzean admitted a familiarity with La Habrea, as Eorzean's own mentor, Athena, had been the previous head of Pandaemonium, and thus La Habrea's predecessor as chief keyward. She had been the one to grant Eorzean his warder position in Asphodelos, and who loved its creatures dearly. The means by which he'd execute his plans were uncertain, though, as despite being a warder, he lacked sufficient power to wield magics of internment to capture and bind the beasts of Pandemonium. Though Themis could not cast such spells, their workings had been burned into Eorzean's memory at a young age, which presented a solution. By combining the Warrior of Light's capacity for exhausting foes, Eorzean's knowledge of such spells, and Themis' raw power, the three could overcome any beast. Their test subject was a creature of the water, a hippocampus. Among the waterways of Asphodelos, the Warrior of Light fought the hippocampus, until it was weak enough to bind. At which point Eorzean and Themis appeared, and united sealed the creature away, proving their theory to be fact. With this small victory, the party regrouped at the gates of Asphodelos. Though Eorzean was glad at their success, he worried over the fact that the group had still yet to see any other warders. Knowing that the keyword of Asphodelos, Hesperos, was a cautious man, Eorzean surmised he had taken the warders he could find and retreated further in. Hesperos, as the keyword, not only had thorough knowledge of the creatures in Asphodelos, but was a kind and composed man, taking great pains to mentor all the warders below him, including Eorzean, who he supported despite his lack of magical aptitude. As an office, keywords not only looked over the halls of their lairs, but held the power to literally transform the space with creation magics. Surmising that the most likely place that he and the warders would have fled would have been further into the innermost circle of Asphodelos, or perhaps beyond to the gates of Abyssos, the party decided to plunge deeper into Pandaemonium. Though first they would have to bypass a phoenix, a bird of fire and life eternal, a pet project of La Habrea, and this one had not been the first attempt at its creation, or the first one to find itself freed. Knowing what peril most likely awaited them, they stepped back through the gates into Asphodelos. Traveling through its halls, a pale shade caught the party's notice, and in an instant, the trio found themselves upon a platform sitting amongst the ruins of Elpis, engulfed in fire. Now aware that whoever was behind events could also manipulate the internal space of Asphodelos, the party came face to face with the mythic creation. Successfully sealing it away just as they had with the hippocampus, the party breathed easy until the arrival of a new foe. The one man capable of warping space within the bounds of Asphodelos, the keyword, Hesperos. With contempt and malice, he maligned the heroes as well as the Phoenix's display of powers, but welcomed the delay it had brokered. Eorzean, distraught and confused as the man he looked up to gazed upon him with such disgust, now everything came into focus. Pandemonium may have been unbreakable, but those in charge of it were not. Refusing to believe the creature which stood before him was the good man he knew, the only possible answer was that something had warped and twisted who Hesperos had been into this nightmare. To which Hesperos commented only as pity, that such a son of La Habrea would be so unskilled in magics, and so dim-witted. Eorzean attempted to spite his revealed father's name, only to have Hesperos fly into a rage at the mere attempt to utter it. Proclaiming he had slipped the bonds of humanity by fusing himself with the creature of myth, he declared himself a Hemitheos, a half-deity, half-man, and able to serve his master La Habrea ever faithfully. Then, Hesperos attempted to pit the same spell of binding on the party as they had upon the Phoenix, but luckily Themis was able to shatter the binds that held them. Rejecting all that Hesperos said and standing in support of Eorzean, Themis and the rest of the party departed to regroup and decide on a new course of action. Back at the entrance, Themis worried over Eorzean, who had loved Hesperos for his compassion, and yet from this being he had received nothing but scorn. Confronting Eorzean about his parentage, Eorzean began by musing that perhaps the only thing he and his father shared was a capacity to bind others in chain. Themis, having put the puzzle pieces together long ago, had not been wholly surprised by this familial connection, even going so far as to note that Athena must have been his mother, which Eorzean omitted. Athena had in fact been the one to bring him to Pandaemonium in the first place, with La Habrea playing no role. One question about this remained though. If Athena had been the chief keyword before La Habrea, why had he replaced her? To which Eorzean revealed that Athena was no more, having become one with the star, and La Habrea had filled the vacant slot. Something he did quickly, with little obvious mourning. Actions which to Themis, even for the composed La Habrea, seemed cold. Switching topics, the crew planned their next action against Hesperos, deducing that if the other warders were alive, the only way to discover their fate was through the newly minted Hemitheos. Wishing to capture rather than kill, and to solve the whys and whos of what drove Hesperos to such madness, Eorzean stated his intent to inter the keyword. With the plan in place, Eorzean also shed some light on the nature of creature that Hesperos had merged himself with. A Virkolikos, a fiend that fed off the aether of its prey. That, and the keyword's ability to change their very surroundings, made him their deadliest foe yet. And so they re-entered the halls to put a stop to Hesperos' madness. Facing him down in his own domain, the Warrior of Light defeated the Hemitheos, leaving him drained and ripe for internment. Attempting to end things, Eorzean prepared the spell, only for Hesperos to break free, and to everyone's shock, screech that he'd go out on his own terms, and that the secrets of his transformation and deception would return with him to the star, striking himself through the chest with his own sword, fading away into the ether. The party, left stunned and alone, mused on what must have all gone wrong for such a man to become so blinded by duty and power. What infatuation with La Habrea had turned him to such actions? Was it merely for a power that La Habrea would be unable to ignore? Such desire and jealousy was something that the ancients had little experience with, but the Warrior of Light knew all too well. At last, though, all was quiet, and there was a small peace in the freeing of Asphodelos. Only something lurked in the darkness. The path to Abyssos shuddered, and a barrier of dark energy sealed the way. Themis was perturbed as he could feel something eldritch stir deep within the heart of Abyssos, and Eorzean recognized the seal as being a warding sigil. With no way forward to search out the surviving warders, the trio returned to the entry gates of Asphodelos. With the defeat of one foe, but so many questions left unanswered, the party knew that they only had scratched the surface of Pandaemonium. Something lurked in Abyssos, and who knew what else lay even deeper beyond. Themis speculated that this malignant presence is what had affected Eorzean upon their first meeting, and possibly even Hesperos. With more warders locked away, they all feared for their fate and the creation of more Hemitheoi. But with order returned to Asphodelos, Themis bid the Warrior of Light rest and return to report on their findings, as he and Eorzean would look after Asphodelos while they searched for a means to enter Abyssos. And so, the Warrior of Light took their leave and returned back through time onto the source. Returning to Claudian to report, the Warrior of Light told them of their time in Pandaemonium. Recognizing that the voice in the crystal had spoken true, the Sharlayans couldn't help but wonder, had it been someone from the past, or someone trying to avert tragedies from the future? Notably, despite the Warrior of Light's actions, the present they returned to was still the same as the one from which they had left, suggesting that all these events may have always been meant to play out as they did. Returning the Crystal of the Ancients to Claudian, the Warrior of Light departed for a well-earned rest, awaiting their next descent into Pandæmonium. This content was brought to you by the Eorzean Archives. If you enjoyed this video, help us please the 12 by leaving a like and subscribing for new content every Thursday, and comment down below with any topic you'd like to see our archons cover in the future. For even more content, discussion, and exclusives, please check out our Discord and consider supporting us on Patreon.